State of the state, there's been a lot of information in the news, and especially like some information about where state aid has gone.
Shelley, sorry to interrupt, but I need Shelley for a moment.
Also talk about where South Seneca is. I think it's good to start out budget discussions on historical, if you want to call the last 4 years historical, but it's certainly historical times. Talk about the technology department, which we call CTS. 3-year projections, we're putting a budget together, but as we've done since 2010 when I've been here, let's talk about what the impact a particular budget year has going out 3 years. And then the last discussing staffing. Here's the visual that I took off an article that I was reading about the state aid recent history in this case. And you can see the significance, everyone can see the mouse here, of going from they have 2000, I think that's the year before, 2008. 2009, 10, you can see slight increase in state aid. But here you can see what schools have been dealing with, not just South Seneca, statewide, with state aid and the big decreases, especially in 2011-12. It has gone up in 12-13, and it's gone up a little bit more statewide in 13-14. But just a reminder, this is budget. This isn't specific districts. So what does this mean to South Seneca, and what's our state aid history? Well, this top line, if this were a bar graph, it would be pretty similar to what you just saw for state. You can see the big drops in foundation aid. Now, just a reminder, foundation aid is the aid that's based on the size of the district, the location, and many of the specific characteristics of our district. It went up slightly, dropped, went up slightly, or at least on a gradual basis here. But as we are looking forward to 14-15, notice it is still not as much as we received in state aid, foundation aid, as 4 years ago. So we've been dealing with a lot less state aid for the school over the last 4 years. Down below, our blue line here represents gap elimination. We hear this a lot. It almost sounds like it should be part of our vocabulary now. But basically, it's a deduct. So when you look at gap elimination, we have had more deducted in the beginning. And notice as it goes down, we have less deducted, but the net is still a deduct. Still means we're getting less aid. And again, you can see that when you look at the yellow line up the top. We're still not where we were 4 years ago. I then said, well, what would be the impact of looking at this cumulatively, because the state aid that we don't receive 1 year, the state aid that we don't have for the second year, the third year, the fourth year. This red line is the cumulative effect, or almost $6 million that the district has not received since 2009. A significant amount of money compared to a $22 million budget. And it's had a big impact on our programming and our staffing. Challenges specific to this year, we have rising expenses, just as the homeowner has rising expenses. Retirement costs is what's unique to our business, and it has increased every single year since 2008, substantially. So retirement costs in this case, TRS is going up from 16.25% to 17.75%. That's 1.5%. That translates to $120,000 increase in expenses. That has a big impact. Insufficient state aid funding, as I showed you in the previous diagram, we are still not to where we were 4 years ago. We also have a state-mandated 1.46% growth factor. In a moment, I'm going to show you that tax cap calculation that we hear about so much. It is based on CPI, Consumer Price Index, or 2%, whichever is less. 1.46 is their calculated CPI. It's less than 2%. It is a multiplier of the calculation, so it reduces the amount that we can increase the tax levy in order to, for that 50% majority. The district has received only 0.32% increase in state aid. Now, the governor will say, no, you received 4%. Well, remember, state aid is based on several aid categories. Foundation aid, which is one that I showed you that we have not yet returned to in the last 4 years, is based on the size of our district and our specific characteristic. There are other aid categories that are based on what we call expenditures. If you spend it 1 year, you receive aid on it in the following year. So to get state aid increase means without spending any money, what would we have received an increase in aid from the prior year? So when you actually break down the governor's numbers, it's 75,000, which is 0.32% increase. Even if you use the CPI of 1.46, that is substantially less than what we can expect with our expenditure increases. Let's go into one of the budgets we were talking about. I said I was going to discuss, and that is technology, or CTS. Paul Briggs, the Director of Technology, he apologized. He was not able to attend tonight, but Steve and I thought we could probably explain it just as well, since you worked closely with us on his budget. First, Paul wants you to know about his philosophy and how he runs his department. He considers them a service organization. They respond quickly to issues, and they provide assistance both with hardware and software. They can remote access support from their homes, from their laptops, in order to meet emergencies or as needed. They also provide their services at competitive costs because whenever possible, they can go through BOCES. BOCES is one of those aid categories that we call expenditure aids. You expend money in BOCES, the following year you receive a percentage back in aid. In our case, it's about 60%. CTS 2014-15 budget. Going on the left side of the column here, their current budget is $758,182. Their proposed 14-15 budget is $811,873. This is an increase of 7%. It's part of a 3-year plan. This is the second year of that third year when this budget was first introduced to the board. 92% of the budget is spent with BOCES. And using our aid of almost 60%, that means of that 811,000, 445,000 will come back to the district in aid the following year. So it's certainly a good use of money to be able to put it in the aidable category. So going on the right side, what does our budget include? Well, we have licensing requirements. Many of the software that we use throughout the district are individually licensed. There are fees associated with that. Adobe is a program we use quite often. He upgraded from version 8 to version 11. Data protection, we see a lot of that in the news, just as relevant to the school district. And we want to make sure we get a good backup. OCMC is the place that backs up our data. We're looking into a future one-to-one program, which means we're going to need increased wireless access points throughout the buildings. We need to improve our infrastructure in order to house all these access. And we need to modernize the computer equipment, which includes 90 desktops, 20 laptops, because they're 5 years or older and they're currently out of warranty.
On last year's 758,182, we received 59% of that in aid back towards this $811,000 budget. Is that
We will, correct, because that is the current budget we're operating under. That's correct. Thank you for bringing that up, because it is a continuous cycle as we go through. Okay?
And we had a question on your very first bar chart. The first bar was labeled 2000-00. What actually was that?
It should be 2008.
2008.
It should be the prior year. Yeah. Any questions? Other questions on this budget?
Just one. which I think, or cable for that matter, which I think is typical of most anybody, and where technology is headed, are they cheaper? Can we replace laptops and desktops with iPads? Because 90, 110, that's half our high school population, right? For a little more money, maybe we could furnish every student with iPads.
So that part there where it says that future one-to-one program, that's what that is. So you want to match one student with one device. And so, a mobile device might be a tablet, it might be, like a Chromebook or something. But that's exactly what we want to do. So that's the direction we're going in, and that's why in this particular budget, we're trying to increase the wireless access to make that more possible.
And I do believe, if Paul were here, we would also stress that we want to be proficient in all different types of technology. He doesn't see laptop and desktops completely going away, because they certainly have a valid use, but it will be much more of a focus on the one-to-one.
Just one question. Maybe you can answer this. So part of the three-year plan then wouldn't involve a one-to-one for everything. That would be for the long time, maybe a 5-year plan.
So we're in the middle of talking about implementing close to one-to-one as early as next year. So we're talking about what that would look like, how to roll it out. And so probably the answer to your question is a little bit longer than the 3 years, but not much longer than that. So we're actively in the process of talking about phasing it in with a big splash probably next year.
Thank you.
Okay, that is the proposed CTS budget. Okay, the 14-15 overall budget, as these budgets are presented to the board, they're then added into the overall budget. There will be building budgets, there will be debt service budgets, all the way up to the point where it will be a finalized budget. I presented the tax cap, was it last time? Maybe it was 2 board meetings ago. And what a difference a couple of meetings make. I think at that time, my first presentation was 3.5%. At that time, I couldn't commit because we didn't have specific data yet that the state was providing that's used in this calculation. Once again, this is a pretty complicated formula. There's 8 parts to it. You can see up at top, there's our CPI, 1.46%. It's also based on growth. Many of this information is provided to us that we don't control. It has to do with what we're currently spending and what we expect to spend. All of those go in there. And the final number, and this would be a final number that we would be presenting as we have to do March 1st to the state comptroller, of 2.6% as the tax cap. So this means that 50% of the public approval is required to go up to 2.6% tax levy increase. If the board proposed higher than 2.6%, we would require more than 60% from the community.
Is this a final number, or is this subject to change again?
This is a final number.
This is the final number.
Yes.
Thank you.
So, the 2.6 then is sort of the working point from that point. You looking at us as a board of what final number to come to.
Yes.
That this is our final tax cap number.
Correct.
Not the final number that we would go out with.
Correct. All it is a guideline, and then the board can go at that, below, or above that. So as I said before, though we look at a budget and approve a budget for 1 year, we're looking at to see what the impact of the 1 year budget would have over the next 3 years. Based on the departments that I reviewed so far, and the budgets that the board has tentatively approved at this point, certainly we go back to any one of those budgets, this would be what the forecast would look like. Total revenues for 14-15, $22,263,793. This is based on the governor's budget. I hope to have more updated information from the legislature, but so far it's not that hopeful that we will be seeing much in the way of increases to the governor's budget. So that's the number I'll be working with as a revenue budget. Expenditures, I am now at $22,577,333. This is less than the last budget that I presented. We were able to save a little bit of money on some of the costs that we were budgeting. So the excess expenses over revenue is about $313,000. It was over $500,000, if you may recall, during our last discussion. So we're tightening this gap a little bit. If this were the budget that we were going to work with, the expenditure budget, what would the impact be going out 2 more years? Using expenditures, taking into account projections, what would retirement costs be, what would the expenditure increases be? We're looking at expenditures next year of $22,948,000, and the year after, $23,370,000. Very modest increases based on some projections I put together. So each year looking out, we're in a deficit, not at all in the category of deficit that we've discussed in the past. We've made some changes in the past, and you can see there, I don't want to say positive impact, but you can certainly see the impact on the budget. And when I'm talking about cutting staff and program, it's not an easy cut to make, but it does have an impact on the bottom line. So for 14-15, our current deficit, if you will, is 213. As I continue looking forward on building budgets, again, debt service, some of these other areas, I'm going to be looking to tighten up that number. But this would be what the projections would be for 3 years going out under these assumptions.
You're using those assumptions of the revenues using the numbers from the previous slide.
Correct.
Okay. The deficit then would have to be made up in 1 or 2 fashions: fund balance, or cutting staff program, or raising taxes through actions.
The 3 that we've always pursued would be tax levy increase, cutting program, or reducing fund balance, correct?
Could we see what the effects towards the fund balance would be, you know, in next, when we project it? Let's say because that's something that I want to keep an eye on, because I do not want to affect our fund balance too far or too much. So if we can see what this kind of deficits would do to our fund balance, it help us with some decision makings that we make as we go through this process.
Absolutely. So as we discussed in the beginning of the budget cycle, we said we're looking now for longevity, and how do we get out 3, 4, 5, 10 years under the current circumstances. So the way to do that is to keep our expenditures as stable as possible. So I use projections going out in that, using those assumptions. Using contingency, now we have built into a budget contingency. And we've used contingency over the last 4 years for obvious reasons. State is threatening to take back state aid throughout the year. We needed a contingency for that. We had the threat of sequestration with the federal government would remove grant money. We needed a contingency for that. Let's see, what else? Tax cap was an issue. What kind of impact would that have on the district, especially if we don't know in advance what the tax cap impact would be. We need a contingency. So our budget right now contains contingencies for various events. So not only do we want to keep expenditures stable, we also want to be able to monitor that contingency and be able to use that when necessary to be able to balance the budget. Then we would also be looking at fund balance right down the road, is how do we best use fund balance for all longevity. And so
I've we've seen in the paper that there are districts that are in jeopardy, of not having the capital to run the district. These on the bottom line are usage, if you had to, reserves, and is there a date when that would run out if we just kept it going at that? Have you looked that far ahead? When would we become a district in jeopardy?
Well, Steve and I just sat down today talking about going forward in the future and using this procedure as far as having a priority list on how we're going to achieve that longevity. We could conceivably go out 10 years. Now, it's very hard to make those kind of commitments because anything can happen.
Right.
But using assumptions, basing it on, I would say the last 4 years, we've certainly seen financial challenges, and this district has met all of those challenges, and is in a position today better than most districts are looking forward. So, using that as an experience in the background, I think we have a pretty good longevity going forward.
Right, because you would make adjustments without using the
Absolutely.
phone to keep us from going on 10 years.
Yeah.
Just one question. The revenue increase for 2014-15, that includes the allowable 2.6% increase in tax levy?
I'm sorry, you said total revenue?
The revenue increase of 1.5%,
Yeah, no, that does not include 2.6.
that does not include 2.6. Okay, thank you.
All right, so part of budget going forward involves staffing for 2014-15. I'm going to hand it over to Steve.
All right, I'm going to switch off of board docs for a minute. All right, so, do you hear what she just said, 10 years? Contrast that to the conversation during the merger talks in October, where everybody thought it was going to be like 2 or 3 years for South Seneca. So you can see how quickly things change. I've been thinking for about 3 or 4 weeks about this particular presentation on staffing. I've gone in about 100 different directions on how to present it. So I decided to do something a little bit visual for everybody. So I apologize that this is not on your iPads here. In fact, maybe it's because I'm a first-year superintendent, but I was gathering information and making this thing perfect right up until this afternoon. So I really wanted it to be exactly right. Even in the current state that it's in, I'm going to have to do some explaining for you so you can see what I'm trying to get at. But I'll do my best, and can't keep those throat lozenges close by. I got a lot of talking to do tonight. So I have proposed a theme for our budget discussions, I'm not a graphic artist. I think I could actually do a better job of this little collage here, but I was actually focused on the meat of the presentation. But we've talked about pride of program at South Seneca, and I was talking to the principals the other day about how proud we are of the program that we've got right up to today. I think about that like those billboards there. The fact that we offer opportunity for our students at every age level. All right, thank you. Obviously, our number one is education, and the mission of this school district is to see to the education of every single student in the district. And we take very seriously our position in the community, not only contributing to the community, but offering resources for the community. Our facilities are well used. We like to think that we're a source of pride for this community. So, our program to this day is something that we can remain proud about. But the story I want to tell tonight is a little bit of a perspective about the impact of some of the graphs that we've just seen for Naomi's presentation. So I'll start with this one, and it's a little bit blown up there with the scale. But, you know, making the point again that our aid back in 08-09 is bigger than what our aid projects to be in 14-15, and we've had this going on in between, has been nothing short of a crisis for us. I didn't want to put another line up here that wasn't reflected in the numbers, but if you think about revenue, if you think about the expenses, expenses never go down. The cost of things never go down. And so if you think about our expenses going from 08-09, that would be a line that would do something like that. You know, so thinking that here is our aid, and our expenses are doing that, the gaps are gigantic. And you know, you've heard me go on and on and on and on about the gap elimination adjustment. You know, somebody might have thought that was a good idea way back when it first started, but to continue it year after year after year has been crippling. And so when I talk about staffing, it's one of the few things that we actually have any control over in the district. And so when we look to cut $1 million out of the budget because $1 million is then withheld from us, the best that we can do is to look at our staff. And so I want to show you what's happened in this period of time here. So I'm going to really need to talk you through what you're looking at here. So this is our elementary school. And my attempt on this slide is to show you what's been going on during that time period. The different things that have happened and the amount of time where the gap elimination adjustment has been in effect, and we've been dealing with this crisis. So what you're looking at here on the slide, each of the squares is a position, and it's basically the positions that have been in the elementary school during this time. It's not exactly what it looked like maybe 5 years ago, but it's a pretty good approximation of what it looked like 5 years ago. And I tried to capture a lot of what happened during the 5 years. So let me tell you about the colors. The blues are the positions that have survived those 5 years. The blues are the positions that have survived the 5 years. The reds are the ones that are gone. And I use this other color here, this brownish color, to represent positions that are shared. Because I want to show you the elementary school and the middle school and the high school, and sometimes we share positions. But along those 5 years ago, we weren't sharing those positions. So I couldn't simultaneously make them blue and that color, whatever that color is. I want you to know that over the course of time, we decided to share those positions. It's hard to read what they all are. We've got a bunch of aides down here, teaching assistants in here, music teacher, PE teacher, art teacher, counselor, science teacher, occupational therapist, speech teacher, psychologist, math teacher, music teacher, librarian. Everything's on there. That's instructional. I call this the instructional staff. And we're going to loosely define that as staff members that work directly with students in some capacity. And so this is our elementary school. You notice that we used to run a pre-K program in-house with 2 teachers and an aide. Actually, there were 2 aides on that program. But during that, like if we turn the clock back to before the GDA, we had 20 regular ed grade level teachers. So we had 20 of those. We had 6 special ed teachers in the elementary building. We had a dedicated science teacher, 2 secretaries, 8 teaching assistants, and 17 aides way back then. And so now, if I fast forward to today, that's the situation in the elementary building today with our staff. So visually, looks like that. That's the impact of the GDA in this building. And I say the impact of the GDA, I believe that really is, it's the GDA's fault. So other things have happened, obviously. We've heard about all the different kinds of inequity in state aid. things to really get outraged about. But when you take $1 million out of the budget consecutive years, there's no place to go except to eliminate staff. And so, one more time, that's what it used to be, here's what it is now. At this point, pre-K has disappeared. Of course, we still have pre-K, but it's run by an outside agency. We use the Happiness House. It's still housed here, but it's not a South Seneca program anymore. So it was 20 regular ed teachers, now it's 15. There were 6 special ed teachers in this building, now there are 5. That's extremely painful because, as you know, you hear every year about more special ed students, but now we have to teach more special ed students with fewer teachers. We had a science teacher, we don't have a science teacher now. There is no South Seneca pre-K anymore. Now we share 3 teachers that we didn't used to share. So now, at this point, we have an art teacher that travels between the buildings. We have a music teacher that travels between the buildings. And we have a reading teacher that travels between the buildings. So that's 3 teachers that are shared. It used to be 2 secretaries, now we have 1.5 secretaries. It used to be 8 teaching assistants, and now we have 2.67. It used to have 17 aides, now we have 8 aides. All right, so there's the elementary school. Here's the middle school. It's a little trickier to the middle school because it's housed on the same campus as the high school. I wanted to keep my premise of 1 box is 1 position, and so I didn't want to put the shared staff on this slide and the high school slide, so I just decided to list them over there. It's a little bit hard to describe all of the things that have happened in this time period in the middle school. And so I'll just do my best here. The color coding is the same. Over here, by design, we share a lot of teachers between the middle school and the high school. And it's hard to capture all of that in just one list like this. But in places where I have it in red, we've lost those positions, we've lost those teachers, or at least a piece of those teachers. The place where I have in parentheses, but it's in black, is it's a share that maybe didn't used to be a share, but the position is still there. And so, for example, our art teacher in high school didn't have to also used to teach in the middle school, but now she does. So that's the idea of that. So of course, we used to have 3 full grade level teams in the middle school. That means that each grade level had a social studies teacher, a science teacher, an English teacher, a math teacher, and a special ed teacher dedicated to that team. And so we used to have 3 full teams like that. We had 13 core teachers. I say core, that's just a term that we use. We think of it at South Seneca that includes Spanish, so Spanish, ELA, math, science, and social studies. We had 13 of those that were just middle school teachers. We had 4 special ed teachers in the middle school. We had a principal for the middle school. We had a nurse for the middle school. We had 2 half-time encore teachers that were assigned to the middle school. So we used to have half a PE teacher, half a position of a PE teacher that was assigned to the middle school. And we used to have a music teacher that was assigned to the middle school who was half-time. We shared 18 different teachers and other positions. So 18 different positions were shared between the middle school and the high school primarily. We didn't do any shares with the elementary school 5 years ago or so. So the reds are the ones that are no longer in the middle school now. So here's what that looks like. So I'll just go back and forth again so you get the visual effect of before and after the middle school. Before and after. That's the effect of all of this. And so used to have 3 full teams, now we have no full teams. Almost every middle school teacher that's in a core subject areas are teaching across grade levels. So, for example, our social studies and our science teacher, their whole course load is they teach 3 sections of 7th grade and 3 sections of 8th grade. And that's the common situation in middle school now. Used to have 13 core teachers, now we have 9. We used to have 4 special ed teachers, now we have 2 special ed teachers. Sometime when you get a chance, ask Sue about the impact of middle school on those people that are the 2 middle school special ed teachers. The workload for those 2 people has been absolutely overwhelming to the point of exhaustion, I would say. So we used to have a principal, now we share a principal. We used to have a nurse, now we share a nurse. There are no more encore teachers that are just for the middle school anymore. Everybody's shared. As I told you, we shared 18 different teachers or other positions back then. Now we can only share 13 of those. And we have 2 shares with the elementary school. The art teacher and the reading teacher are shares between the middle school and the elementary school now. Of course, we have a music teacher that travels between the buildings. She's shared among all 3 schools. So that teacher is elementary, middle, and high school. I didn't go into the details of all of that and just kind of contemplate what it used to be versus what it is. I think it was well known in the early years of our cutting how much the middle school was hit tremendously hard during those years. I think we've made a really strong effort. I'm going to transition to the high school to preserve as much program as possible in the high school. Here's the story there. It used to be we had 14 core teachers for the high school. You see that I've organized teachers by department now. And I've listed some other departments over here together. So para-music teachers, PE teachers, there's an art teacher, we have the Spanish teacher, tech teachers. Hey man, the business teachers out there?
All the way down.
Oh, there they are, business teachers. Ooh, thanks. Those are the other departments that are very, very small departments, but most of those teachers are shared. You can see that in some cases we used to have full positions that are now part-time positions. So I think this was the effort to try and preserve the program without, completely eliminating positions. So we just hung on to pieces that were associated with specific courses. We had our own principal for the high school. We had our own nurse for the high school. We had a social worker back then. We had a school resource officer, if you remember that, that was assigned to us. We had a home careers teacher. We had 2 tech teachers and a psychologist also in the high school. Today it looks like this. So as I said, I think visually you can see that this attempt in the high school to preserve as many of the courses as possible. So the board has done a really great job of that, I have to say. But nonetheless, this is the situation that we have today, which is 12 core teachers instead of the 14. We share the principal, we share the nurse. We have no more social worker, we have no more school resource officer, we have no more home careers teacher. Our tech teachers, there used to be 2 of them, now it's down to 1.2. We used to have a psychologist full-time, and now our psychologist is half-time. I hope that in my choice to present the material this way, you kind of get a better impact or better kind of sense of what's happened over the course of those 5 years. So if I could just summarize, back in 2006-07, before all this happened, we had 88 teachers for the district. Today it's 69.1. We had 3 principals, now we have 2 principals. We had 16 teaching assistants, now we have 9.67. We had 27, we used to have family consumer science, that's home and careers. We used to have a school resource officer, we used to have a social worker, now we don't have any of those things. Our 2 psychologists has become 1.5, our 3 nurses has become 2 nurses, for a grand total of almost 42 positions that have happened as a result of the gap elimination adjustment and the decisions that have had to be made on the part of the board. So I see some people with their microphones in hand, so you have questions?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that probably when I first came on the board and I got involved in legislative effort, I would think that our legislators just drive by, see the grass mowed, the driveways plowed, and business as usual. Although we didn't know it, this is the best illustration that a stakeholder could take to a, legislative person. And every one of those layoffs, as Rick Tim spoke, is a layoff in the community. It's not money generated back here. These people are unemployed. They either move and don't help our community or district at all. So that's a big loss. You just illustrated it. A stakeholder that you went to the forum, I believe,
Yes.
and we tried to educate them. Somebody that would take charge and, complain about the way the money is distributed. There's another good example that you could teach people how to go out and advocate for us to get something back. I think it was a nice job, Steve.
Thank you. Thanks. So I do have one more slide here. Just to, the work that's to be done during this budget season is to be thinking about this. Because as I said before, staffing is one of the few things in our budget, honestly, that we have a lot of direct control over. So, you've heard those school finance presentations before, where Rick Timms counts off the 3 things that boards can do. And, one of them is to cut staff or to adjust the staffing. And so I want you to think about a couple of things at the same time. One thing is the conversation we had during Naomi's portion of the presentation, where we looked at, even today, in our 3-year projection, we have to keep an eye on the expenses over revenues. At the same time, we talked about the fact that we're positioned today to be in a pretty decent position with some reasonable expectations to go 10 years out in the future. And for those of you that have been coming to board meetings for a while, it really wasn't that long ago when we were worried about 2016-17. We had hard conversations about going off the cliff. And if you follow the news around the state, you can read about enough of these districts that are still having those conversations. I happen to know that a lot of the districts right in our region are having those conversations about 2 years of life. And so a lot of that very, very difficult work that was done, Southside had the foresight to do it, as painful as it was happening. And so today we're positioned a little bit better than we used to be. We're still looking at the chart that says excess expenses over revenues, so there are still hard questions to be asked. But I'm going to put it out there at this point now, in terms of conclusions. The conclusions are really up to the board about what you take away from this whole discussion. And what I want to ask you as you build this budget to go to voters in May is the program that we have today, the one that you saw on the screen there, is that the right program for today? Is today's program the right program? And if not, what adjustments, if any, should be done? And the last little visual thing I want to do is bring this back again to remind you, once again, we've got a heck of a program here. We're very, very proud, even today, after all of that, with the program that we've got. I'm going to talk in my superintendent's report, that's why I don't need the throat lozenges, about the Facebook page that we just started. And it's been easy during this 10 days or so since the pages went up. It's been easy to post another thing and another thing and another thing and another thing. You know why? Because we offer so many opportunities for our students, even in these conditions. There's so many things going on to be proud of. It's kind of fun to post the next one up there and let people know about what's going on. So the fact that we can still offer opportunities and education and be part of the community is something to be enormously proud about. And if you don't think the remaining staff isn't given every last bit of what they've got, that's a necessity around here. All of those surviving positions are carrying the weight of what we used to do with 42 more adults. There are so many hidden things about that. Forget the curriculum, forget about the courses that we teach. We're talking about, basic needs like supervision and safety and all of the kinds of things that a school staff is asked to do nowadays with students that they probably weren't asked to do 30 or 40 years ago. We have a very, very needy population of students. Ask anybody. Walk the halls and talk to people. Our students need us. And so for the people that are left, the job is huge. If you follow the news and you hear about how much more is expected of schools nowadays, all of this conversation around our schools are failing and we don't compare well around the world, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We're getting close. It's a testament to the people that are left that they can still do this work and not drop of exhaustion. And in fact, I would go so far as to say that if you pay attention, people do drop of exhaustion because of how much they put in. So that's the work I think that has to be done moving forward in the next few board meetings as we work to adopt a budget. And we talk about whether this particular set of staff is the right one or whether we want to make any adjustments. And so the hard part is balancing the two things at the same time. Because I think that every last one of us would want to bring all 42 of those positions back. And that's just an impossibility. But we can talk about what it is that we can do, and if we can do something smarter, or if we can do something that's going to be a high impact. We should really consider it and talk about how much it's going to cost as we contemplate the other stuff as well. So we can go back to finish up your last slide, I think, on yours, right?
Before you move on, Steve.
Go ahead.
To go back to the slide of the questions that he asked. I sit here and I watched those two slides, and it really bothered me a lot because I've been here through all of that and had to watch the pain of our staff take those cuts and then figure out how they were going to still teach the students that we had and still allow them to graduate with a sound education. And so I commend Steve and Janie and the staff for the work that they've done over the last 5 years, because it's been tough. And you could ask any staff member, they'll tell you how tough it is. So my thoughts here is that, in my mind, you ask the question, is it the right program today? You're right, Steve, we do have a wonderful program. I thought about, before tonight's meeting, just to bring up some things, and I'm sitting here going, I open up the Seneca Community, the Senator Shopper paper, and there's something about South Seneca in there, an achievement of something, music, sports, drama. I was thrilled to death last night to watch the little cheerleaders from 4 towns. I mean, how many schools have that? Honestly, think about that. So between that and our great community, in my mind, and as your leader, as the board president, I don't think we have the right program. Okay? Not that there's anything wrong with our program. I think that we're short changing our kids because of the amount of pressure that we put on our staff to try to teach the kids over the last 5 years, has been to the point where they are exhausted, but they'll keep giving all the time. I would have to say in my mind that we can't remove any more from the program that we have. And I will stand here and take that statement as far as I have to take it, but it can't go any further. So we have to make some decisions, and we also, again, have to call on the community, as we have in the past, who's always supported this district, of what kind of district do they want to see in the future. The 10 years you're talking about is not 10 years of the program that we have today. There'll be definite changes between now and that 10 years if we don't continue to make some tough choices, okay? We'll still have a door open, we'll still have a school, but we'll have the same program that we have today. Will the kids that graduate this year, and then the kids that graduate 5 years from now, will they graduate with the same kind of programs? Think about that thought process. So as we think as a board for the future and what we're going to put out to our community, our programs cannot suffer any more losses. So I'll make that statement.
So rounding out the budget discussion, I put a slide in here showing the evolution so you can see where we started. The current budget is $21,933,000, just shy of 22. The first rollover budget was 22.6, that was a 3.15% increase. It's now down to 22,577,000, or 2.94. And this includes athletics, which the board approved last board meeting, health insurance, we had some adjustments in health insurance, and the CTS department. So again, as we go through the budgets of departments and various other sections of the budget, they will be, those numbers will be included in the budget and will be presented to the board. Next budget presentation, hopefully we'll have update from the legislature. Again, we're not hearing any positive words about what possibly could happen. I guess we can still be hopeful. We're going to discuss employee benefits, debt service, the BOCES budget, and the special education budget. Just a reminder, the hearing for the 14-15 budget vote is May 13th at 7 o'clock in the Miller Auditorium in Ovid. And the actual vote will be May 20th from 1 to 8 in the Elementary Auditorium right here in Lincoln.
And just a quick question. If you go back to the slide before that, rollover budget says that it's a 3.15% increase. And you presented to us 3 different budgets so far, and that's been brought down to a 2.94. Do you see a continual decrease?
Yes,
in that
yes,
as we go
I see
through other
some areas that we can tweak, yes. Thank you.
Thank you. And move on now to superintendent report.
Just as long as we're on that subject. Mary, did you attend the thing today? Would you mind taking some time now to tell us what that was about? Sorry to surprise you with that.
I went to the Rocket Center and,
What microphone?
do I need a microphone or can you hear me just fine? You can't hear me just fine? Oh, I'm embarrassed. Well, then I won't speak up, I'll just speak at home instead of project. I can project. I went to hear Senator Myers, who is not our senator, but I think that's a different one city. First of all, there were probably, I would because he feels like manufacturing is the thing that New York State really needs to go for, because that's where the money's going to come from and support the state. Then the first question he got asked was by a woman from Trumansburg, and it was about GDA, and she nailed it right off. And he said, oh, he agreed that it definitely should be abated, they should be doing that, he agreed. And then one of the people was concerned, then they talked about the pre-K program. And one concern was that some schools were not going to have room for the pre-K. The buildings didn't have room in the buildings for pre-K. And some were concerned about people who were doing daycare, they were going to lose their jobs because these kids were going to go to pre-K. And there was this talk that there was a possibility of private nursery schools being able to be licensed to do the pre-K. So that was so interesting. Then there was a talk about the frozen property tax rebate. And one man from the legislature, the Tompkins County legislature, said that they figured it out, and it looked like that the big check that people would be getting, the average person in Ithaca would be getting in October, just before elections, a $7 check. And then he said, and when you consider how much money it's going to cost to mail it out process, and all the work processing and things, it didn't seem like it was a really good idea. The senator said that, oh, he heard about $200, and he'd like to see their figures on how they figured out it was going to be $7, because he was pretty sure everybody was going to get a $200 check. And then there was talk about mandates, unfunded mandates. And he immediately said that they had a long way to go on the mandate program. But it was his personal opinion that if the government thought that a mandate was important enough for a school or a community to have to do it, then they got to be paid for it. People thought that was a good idea. Then, we talked about the idea that when they were working on the GA, that poorer schools were getting a larger cut than richer schools. And he pointed out, well, that's because poorer schools got more state aid than richer schools. So when they cut it was a big deal. And then they said, well, how did that happen? He said, well, it all has to do with the aid formula that nobody understands. And he said, he really thought it was time that there be a new formula. So I asked, who's going to write the new formula? Well, that they weren't sure about that. But I said, well, it really seemed to me like if the legislature feels like there ought to be a new formula, then somebody ought to be doing something about it, because it certainly does have some places where it could use some help. Then there was a concern that schools aren't preparing kids for jobs that, like jobs in technology. And particularly, they said Syracuse, for instance, has a list of almost 200 jobs that they aren't able to fill because there's just nobody around that has that knowledge. And I mean that because everybody has to get a Regents diploma now to graduate. And in order to do that, they have to take all those Regents courses, which are required for college, but not necessarily for a technical job. And he agreed that that was probably true. And then there was a very interesting man stood up and talked a little bit about how that seemed to be the problem with the core curriculum too. He said he remembered when schools were small enough so that the teachers knew all the kids and knew how they learned and could teach to the way they learned, and that kids came out of school with their strengths strengthened and their weaknesses filled in, and that they, you know, he said, I remember what my school was like, and he said, schools are so different. And he said, it's the core curriculum, that's one of the real weaknesses with the core curriculum, is that it's the same thing for everybody. Everybody's expected to pass these tests, and that's interesting too, because even kids with learning disabilities are expected to pass these tests at these high levels, and that's not necessarily going to happen. Then they talk a little bit about consolidation and they were talking about how consolidation, you know, that would help meet budgets and things. And then they were pointing out how it seemed like the government was interested in consolidation, but they thought they'd probably do it by bankrupting all of the schools so that they force them to consolidate, and all of the smaller communities, they'd be bankrupt, so they'd be forced to consolidate. So they didn't think that consolidation by bankruptcy was necessarily the best way to do it. And the last point that was made was that there are going to be several vacancies on the Board of Regents. And wouldn't it be a good idea that this particular person knew of several educators that were interested in the position on the Board of Regents? And Senator Nara said, the difficulty with the Board of Regents is that the legislature and the Senate meet together and they vote on the Board of Regents. And when they do that, there's many, many more people from the legislature than there are from the Senate. And there are many, 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 many more people from New York City and South State. And so that's where the regents come from. That's about all I know.
Thanks, Mary. When Mary volunteered to go tonight, I was tuned in to how distracting the conversation can be from what I consider to be the primary job now, which is to get rid of the GPA. And it's easy to see how, I mean, all of these issues are very important, but you know, we're keeping an eye on the school districts and the mission of the school districts, and that's the one thing. Whenever I see the legislators, I tell them it's one simple thing that you can do. It's not very complicated at all. Just stop withholding our state aid, and we'll be just fine. I really do believe that.
I did point out to them that how much money we lost as a small district. I didn't bother to say South Seneca because I didn't want them to know I wasn't from this district.
So, thanks, Mary. Thanks for going and bringing back the report. I was very interested because I knew I wasn't going to be able to make it to that one. You want to say something, Ken?
Yeah, something funny actually.
Go ahead.
So, you know what we refer to the GDA as now?
What?
The Growth Elimination Act.
Yeah. Very good. This conversation is not the only conversation. The Board of Regents made some news this week that you know, the pressure has been on from all sides about the sloppy and some would say irresponsible method of implementation across the state of this Common Core curriculum or Common Core standards that we have. And so you could see this coming for a while, that somebody was going to do something. And so this week they announced 19 proposals to slow down the implementation, for lack of a better word. This came from a subcommittee on Tuesday, and then it was voted at the full board today, and maybe it was Monday and Tuesday. But the full board took action on 18 out of the 19. The one that they didn't, that they pulled back on was a provision about the APPR plan. And so, you know, the conversation there is that's the job of the legislature. Everything's up for debate. You know, some of the highlights of what was done this week is that it won't be until this current group of fourth graders now that will be held to graduation requirements around the Common Core standards. And so you just see the year 2022 out there in the headlines. That's what that's all about, is the class of 2022 now, that will be the first class that is going to be held to the high school version of the standards. There's a lot more in there, a lot more to talk about, a lot more that will be talked about. Same time that was happening out, the entity that had brought a lawsuit against the state for inequitable funding has issued another lawsuit, begun action on another lawsuit. This one's backed by many of the big organizations, the education-based organizations in the state. So we'll have to follow that in the news and see where that goes, how long it takes. It's a little bit astounding to me how many times we've changed course just this school year. It's really unheard of that you start off a school year with one plan, and then partway through the school year it becomes another plan, and then partway a little bit farther down in the school year it becomes yet another plan. You think this isn't a burden on a local school district? You know, I was asked after the Board of Regents made this action to make a comment to the newspaper about it, and the only thing that I could really think to say, well, first of all, I told them that the memo was 37 pages long and I better read it before I comment on it, but the only thing I could really think to say was that we spend so much time in this climate in schools just figuring out what the new rules are. And that's not an exaggeration, because we really do have meeting after meeting after meeting where you talk to colleagues at every level, and one colleague says, well, you know, I think it means this, and somebody else says, no, I read that it means this, and then, no, you can do this. Did you know that you can have your kids do that, and your teachers can do this instead of that, and your head starts to spin because it seems like every district does it a little bit different. Everybody's got a different approach. What's happened in the course of all of this is that the networks of colleagues is getting stronger because everybody finds the need to compare notes now and say, what is your district going to do? What is your district going to do? Maybe we should all do the same thing together. This happens at the superintendent level, it happens at the principal level, it happens at the director level, it happens at the teacher level, and you know, it really is a little bit astounding about how wide the practice is as everybody tries to figure this stuff out. You know, one classic example of that is the APPR plans. You just hear stories from other places about the approaches that have been taken. And now, here we have this action, which is going to cause more change and more redirection. Many people are welcoming it because the stress has been so great, it's been moving so fast, and so for a lot of us, I think it feels like, you know, maybe we'll get a chance to breathe a little bit. There's still a lot of stuff to object to in this proposal. But like one quick good example of what I'm trying to say is the stuff just about the state testing. So just let me talk about that for 1 second. So at the beginning of the year, I already told you about how the accelerated 8th graders in math were facing 3 tests to take on 3 different curricula in the 2013-14 school year. They were expected to sit for the 8th grade test in April, which is the Common Core curriculum for grades 3 through 8. So at the 8th grade level, they would sit for the Common Core 8th grade math test in April. And then the proposal was that we're going to have a Common Core algebra test in early June for the first time ever. We'll have a Common Core Regents exam somewhere around June 2nd or June 3rd. And that is going to be testing the standards related to the new algebra course under the Common Core standards. So that's curriculum number 2. And then if students choose, they can also come, like they traditionally did during Regents Week, and take the old, what they call the old Regents, or the 2005 standards Regents exam, which is seriously like a whole other curriculum of algebra. So this particular group of kids, a lot of people had been thinking about them because they were the ones that were going to have to take in the same subject. They're taking an algebra course. They signed up for 9th grade algebra in 8th grade, and this is the gift that they got from the state, was 3 different tests on 3 different curricula. So as you well know by now, about halfway through the year, the state applied for a federal waiver so that we could relieve the burden of the 8th grade test. And so we've been trying to figure out what we're going to do about that. And we finally got to a plan. Well, one thing that we knew for sure was they were all going to have to take that Common Core test because every incoming 9th grader, anybody in a 9th grade class for this current school year, 2013-14, was going to have their entire high school career under the umbrella of the Common Core standards. So that June 2nd test was not an option until this week. So now we find out that it won't be held until the class of 2022. So now the schools are kind of scrambling about what's going to be our approach to that June 2nd exam. And so maybe those students, guess what? When it all shakes out, all they have to do is, they're in the algebra class, they just take the algebra Regents and Regents Week, like kids have been doing for the last 30 years. So it's a pretty interesting school year. And so just digesting that 37-page memo and the 18 different things is going to take some time. Lots of implications around local testing, talking about K through 2 standardized testing, goes on and on and on. Accountability for schools, accountability for teachers. A lot of that's still very up in the air about how this all plays out. But we'll do the best we can to figure out what the rules are. And I'll keep giving my reports. So, does anybody have any questions on any of that?
Just a quick comment. You mentioned that the Common Core situation has changed because of pressure. And if you heard on the news, the pressure came from parents and from educators. And so my call out to everybody is it's time to put the same kind of pressure that was put on the Common Core on to eliminate the GEA. Because the more that they hear from the parents, and the educated parents are understanding how this whole thing has turned out, the better chance we have for that to change. I was just, unfortunately, I apologize, Steve, but I was reading something while you were talking, but the statement, but I heard everything you said.
That's very good.
At least I can confess, though. It says here that school aid proposes nearly 21.9 billion, including 100 million for pre-K. The budget book commits 1.5 billion to pre-K over the next 5 years. It says facilities required to implement a statewide system will be partially funded by a $2 billion education facility fund. So the next 5 years, I just read $3.5 billion, okay, is being pulled out of what could be actually state aid given to the districts. Because 5 years ago, we had our own pre-K system, and we could take care of it ourselves if we were given the money to take care of it. So I want everybody to understand that. Dave and I saw Zolio the other night, and he pointed out the same thing, that the pre-K, which I wholeheartedly support pre-K, and the new technology thing that he is putting into his budget is just a way to avoid putting monies back into the districts by reducing the amount of GEA that they are taking away from us. So just keep that in mind as you talk to legislators, or you might write to legislators, that the money's there. Just give it back to the schools and let the schools take care of taking care of the children the way they feel is the best way to do it. Instead of telling us how we should do it by these different programs that Homo comes up with every year, it seems like.
So thank you for saying that. I do think it's true. It's why we've been doing what we've been doing, to send people to these meetings and talk to the legislators so that they have the message to come back. And so, you know, Naomi has been saying, don't expect much. But, you know, I find myself still holding on to that little bit of hope that all of this extra pressure is going to keep moving the needle in the direction that it needs to go. And I really am convinced at this point that the legislators have been hearing it. I just think that they need to hear it as strongly as possible and how important it is. And all of those are great points. The last thing I think to say about that is one of the few things that are not mandated anymore is kindergarten. So some people have been making the point that we're going to spend $3.5 billion for universal pre-kindergarten, and then schools are going to be forced to cut their kindergarten program, so we'll send them home for a year and then come back for first grade. So you know, that's where we stand in the state of New York nowadays. I'll just say a little bit more on the happy note of you know, the launch of the Southside Facebook page. It really has been kind of fun. It's nice to have a place to put things that are, you know, that are just news about the district. All of the goal here is to not necessarily just throw out everything that's nice and rosy about the district, but also to provide a forum for people to get information, to comment about things, to get answers in a way that didn't exist a few weeks ago. And everybody knows how ubiquitous Facebook is now. Very, very many people use it. In the first day that we had it posted, we had almost 100 what they call likes, and now it's almost up to 300. And so, as I said, it's been very easy to find things to put out there, and we'll continue doing that. And it's also a place where people can, you know, have a little bit of two-way public conversation. I do want to say that it's a place to post comments on, but there are rules about it. So when I introduced it to the district by email, I just put out the expectation that all discourse was going to be civil discourse, that people weren't going to be allowed to be rude and nasty, and that any posting that is specific to a particular situation of somebody or names a person in a negative light will be excluded from the page. It's going to be taken off the page. So that's not what it's for. Certainly, it's fine for people to bring up issues and to, you know, even criticize. But the only expectation is that it's all done in a civil manner. So it'll be monitored pretty closely for that. And I think that it can provide a nice service. I've already been able to use it on the 2-hour delays and school closings. So it's yet another place where people can get that information. I think it's off to a good start, and I hope it'll just keep getting better. That's it for me. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to administrative reports. Any questions for Naomi on her report. Board member reports, instead of a couple of things. Just in the light of discussions of budgets and positions and so on and so forth, I have been speaking a lot about the initiative of what STEM means and what that means to education. And John Steele, our high school, middle school principal, and Steve and I met. Mr. Steve Goldberg is also part of that discussion, but couldn't meet with us at the time. But Steve has reached out to one of his colleagues and professional. His name is Jerry Elmer, and he is from, he's the National Director of High School Development, Universal Technical Institute. He's from New Hampshire, and he's actually going to be here on the 26th to give us about a half-an-hour presentation on what that means. This is not a implementation of the STEM program, even though it is a goal. I believe we're trying to work towards that goal as a district someday, but at least we can educate of what it means. And so this is a really great opportunity. We're going to get it advertised to the point where we hope we have a lot of staff come and community members to at least hear what he has to say. And so, again, look at it as an educational opportunity for the future. And then the only other thing that I have is that Dave Dresser and I are planning on attending the Lions Club meeting on Wednesday night next week. Just to fill them in, it's just more of the, if you remember the meeting after the merger vote, we talked about different things that I thought were important. And so meeting with groups around the area is something, so we're going to speak to them. And at one time, the Lions Club was an advocate to the school and did some mentoring. And we're going to talk to them about how to get back. We'd like them to be back involved in the school again and how we can accomplish that. So that's all I had. Roger, Dave, if you would speak a little bit on Zolio from the other night after Roger, I appreciate that.
Well, the meeting was well attended in Fort Myers, I would say 100 people, a number of parents, teachers. I think one of the things that came out of it was mentioned here without the term, but they talked about how money that would be going to pre-K, technology, and so forth, actually distractions. That word was used by, I think, the BOCES.
That was the superintendent of Auburn.
Superintendent. And in some ways that is the case. None of us are against pre-K. We had it here under our office for a long time. So some of the governor's proposals, while very admirable, are detract from the funding for basic education. This foundation is what we have to teach with, staff. It's been held up. And yet, the governor is still imposing this gap elimination, not as much as in the past, so he treats it as an increase, which it isn't. It's actually less than decrease. So, we need to emphasize it. I see gap elimination basically as the governor and the legislature balancing the budget of the state on the backs of the school children. Period.
Thanks, Dave. Can you going to respond to that? Quickly.
I really think we all start calling it Growth Elimination Act, including the newspapers. We need to do something about it. I'm calling it the Growth Elimination Act.
Okay, at the TSD BOCES, we had a speaker, Joe Vargo, and he's partners with Education and Business out of Syracuse. He takes, it's a not-for-profit organization that takes the businesses, the manufacturers, and introduces them to the schools and gets children to actually get an idea of what the businesses are like today. The best comparison I can tell you is, in 1965, I got my first job at Gould's Pumps. Well, manufacturing doesn't look like 1965 anymore, I was told. Who knew? And we talked about programs that they have, and as I looked down the programs, STEM, Careers Day, and Leadership Forum could South Seneca attend. It then became that they were going to invite the TST BOCES schools to come, but it's really meant to be a leadership forum. Leaders. So I get thinking about leaders. It's kind of like guidance people that lead students into the correct program. So we will be receiving an invitation, and leaders that would like to step on board, if you have time, money, a place, you can do anything. If you can direct teachers, we could get a first mini step into this. Another thing I heard, Finger Lakes has a STEM hub. Did you know about it?
I know a little.
Yeah, so there is a STEM hub in our area. I don't know much about it, but I just thought I would bring that to our attention, and I got a few handouts I can pass on to you. And then in our meeting, it was announced that Bill Daggett, motivational speaker, founder, and chairman of the International Center for Leadership in Education, will speak at Ithaca High School. Have you ever heard of him? Yeah. So that's going to be an open invitation, March 13th. I think I'm complete.
Finger Lakes Community College, FLCC, does a STEM hub.
It just said there's a hub in Finger Lakes. I'm not sure if they meant the college.
Really don't know about that. Guess I'll try to-
You want me to research it today?
No, I'll get with you though, and maybe it's
Okay.
so.
If you research that too.
Oh, I want to hear about Syracuse, but I'll research it.
No, actually, what I was going to ask is the information that you just shared with us is very, very valuable. I'm wondering if you could do that to Shelley so that we can put it on board docs.
I was thinking that, or to my, yeah.
That'd be great.
Yeah, and that's a great idea. I mean, anything that anybody has to share, the stuff that we got from the things that we go see. If you scan it, get it to Shelley or drop it out to her, she can put it on there anytime, so that we all can have.
Usually Roger's the one with the really great ideas, and I just carry the ball.
Actually, I said that.
Well, let me-
Call the play, you carry the ball.
Let me just bore you a little bit more, and this was an email that we received. I passed it around, or asked you to share it with people. But it came from NISBA, New York State School Board Association, and it said the GEA must go. This week, NISBA delivered a legislative priority paper on the gap elimination adjustment to all 213 members of the state legislature. The paper detailed the devastating impact the GEA has on school districts through program cuts, staff reductions, and loss of student opportunities. Given the governor's planned state budget surplus, NISBA made it clear that this reduction in state aid for schools must end now. Now it's time to contact your state legislator by phone, email, fax, social media, to help strengthen the vital message to schools and local taxpayers alike. Continue to supplement the GEA, and your elected representatives are the ones that have the ability to end these devastating cuts. That's all I'll say about GEA. I think we're good to move on. Committee reports. The policy committee met tonight. We talked a little bit about eligibility policy that the extracurricular has been talking about. And so we'll see a first draft of the changes in the February 26th board packet order on both items. And then we also received our huge pile of changes from Erie 1 BOCES. ask Steve to fish through those. And if there's changes that he sees that are legitimate changes, just to go ahead and inform us that he's okay with that. And then the ones that need some more detailed work, we'll bring those to the policy committee at our next meeting. For other committees that met? Catherine?
January 27th, the extracurricular activities, athletics, and curriculum committee met. At the time, we discussed the issue of the athletic budget. Steve provided the committee with the information requested at our last board meeting when we discussed the athletics budget. And it outlined the percentage of students by grade participating in the sport, which is what we had asked for. As well, the students were listed with the different sports that individuals participated in. Overall, we saw that in grade 7, 53% of the students, that is 34 out of 64, were participating. Grade 8, 54%. Grade 9, 57. Grade 10, 63. Grade 11, 83. Grade 12, 73. And overall, approximately 132 students in grades 7 through 12 are not participating in athletics. While we're waiting for the results of the surveys of interest for cheerleading, football, and indoor track, again, as we discussed at our last board meeting, we agreed in our committee that support of the current budget of athletics would be in the best interest of the student body. And depending on the survey of interests, we also had some other discussions. Some questions were and concerns discussed, included, depending on the survey of interest for football, should we consider redoing the requirements of that sport? We, along with athletics, we discussed whether or not the goalposts on the football field are legal. And we also discussed the fact that the external basketball court at the open campus is ill-constructed and it is not a level playing. We have to get a level playing court or field. At any rate, pending the surveys, our action would be to support adopting the athletic budget, and we also support the inclusion of so-called lifelong sports. We also discussed the progress on the eligibility. However, at the time that we met, you were unable to meet in the policy committee, so we tabled that. We discussed information on testing, the items that we discussed about that, and then specifically the 3 different tests on 3 different curricula specific to the grade 8 students. That's outdated information now, so I won't bother to discuss it. Finally, before our open discussion, our final topic was marketing of the district. Many of you will remember that Mr. DePerna feels very strongly that we should market our district. We don't disagree. We began a discussion on marketing of the district. We asked some questions, and I'm going to ask them in this venue so that we can all be thinking about this, and we would love to have feedback on this. So, an original question was at the meeting, do we have a marketing class or club? The answer is no. We also discussed, sorry about this, Amanda. We do have a marketing class, okay. And we discussed who would be the best, where would be the best place to direct this. Would it be business education? Would it be tech writing? And there's a specific marketing class. There is. Thank you. And so which would be best suited to this activity of marketing our district? How can we engage our students in that? So I'll be looking for some information from you, Matt. And another question is, what is our overall goal? So we do a little bit of brainstorming. We would like to entice folks to move into our district. We want to engender those good feelings in our community. We have our Facebook page now. At the time that we think we had to be maybe a day or two.
Right,
A day or two. So no reasonable feedback at that point. We want to look at a journalism club. How do we want to pursue public relations? We want to know to those folks that are going to be, that we are going to be marketing to, where we've been, where we are, and where we're going. And if one is to choose a school, why choose South Central? Now, we know that we have pride in program, and that's something that we're going to continue to pursue. But we really want to do this in a well-thought-out, proactive manner, the smart of our district. So any and all feedback on this work in progress will be very, very welcome, and very pleased to see you here today. Quit trying to slide down the chair. What are you doing?
I'm thinking no.
No, it's even. And the members of this particular committee, for those persons who may not remember, were Steve, Roger, myself, and Dave Terry. So you're welcome to shoot some feedback to any of us. Open discussion. We discussed a few ideas. Some of us threw a ball, and others of us carried, and vice versa. We are wondering if it might be something that we can encourage our students to get involved with, to research GEA, ask questions about things like how much should we receive, why haven't we received it, where's the money, and what would you do with the money as a student if we got that GEA money back, or if they simply eliminated the elimination, what would you do with the money? How would you grow our school? And I said, perhaps we could give some extra credit if they attach letters to lawmakers to their research. Also, we discussed how to promote our sports programs. How can we do this? Should we suggest some demonstrations, such as our delightful 4TC cheerleaders that we saw last night at the girls' basketball game? That was a delight. It was a delight. And it brought parents and interested grandparents and other interested parties into the gymnasium, and I was delighted to see that many of our student body responded to these tiny, tiny little girls who were out there just cheering their hearts out. It was really wonderful. And so perhaps we'll ask Krista and her staff, can we get creative about how to promote our athletic program? How can we sell it? How can we capture those untapped resources, those students, referring back to that 132 students that don't participate in any way, shape, or form? What are the reasons that they don't participate? How can we help them to mitigate some of those circumstances? So it was an hour-long meeting. It was very valuable, and that's what we got. As I said, feedback extremely well.
You want to backtrack a little bit? Back to that meeting at TSD BOCES, I asked if schools could take field trips to these places of business because they're working with kids. And I was informed that one way to have your school kids go through it is virtual tours. I haven't seen one, I didn't look it up. But if you think Paul might know how to put one up for us to see a little one, or?
Yeah, we had distance learning equipment, and kids have done that. I'd love to see us do more of it.
Okay, we don't have to really see it more than if we've done it, we're preparing them, because as I heard about STEM, it wasn't that they're going to step out of high school and fit into a job like it was in 1965. They're going to go to a junior college and then make the progression. And one of the big drawbacks they talked about, I should bring this up, was algebra. You take it in 8th grade, 9th grade, and you spoke about that. And then they needed to get in junior college, but we don't retain it. So there was some discussion about classes offered in school on algebra that are review classes. Do we do that here?
I'm really glad you asked that question. I've been talking with TC3 about there's an entry-level placement exam for community colleges called I always forget it, but I think it's called the AccuPlacer. And TC3 offers a service where we can actually administer that assessment to kids in the junior year of high school. Not to grade them so much as to gather information about where they are at the end of their junior year and what we can do for them in their senior year to get them ready to. That's a really very pertinent conversation to have. I love the idea of partnering with the community college to bridge that gap. This has been done in a few area schools where they get the professors at the college and teachers in the school to collaborate on a project like that, and maybe even build a course in the senior year that is specifically designed to do that function. So it's a very pertinent question and something we have been talking about.
And so I just want to thank you, the committee, for the work that you guys did. I mean, that's a lot of work, and I appreciate that. And it's the direction that I see us going and the things we need to try to do for our kids. So thank you for the work. If no other committee reports, we'll move on to new business. Need a motion to approve the resignation of Kelly Vanessa from the position of teaching assistant effective February 14, 2014.
So moved together.
Second, Kurt.
Discussion?
So this is a pretty big deal. For as long of the time as it's been since Mary was in that room, Kelly's been doing the alternative classroom. It's a very demanding position. As you know, Dale Ellis retired from the middle school version of that position last year. Now Kelly from the high school position. Over the years that she's done that job, she's made really vital connections with some of our most difficult students. So it's quite a loss to lose Kelly from that role. The happy news is that she's interested in serving the district still as a substitute teacher and substitute aide. So I actually believe that's a little bit further down on the agenda. But so we don't quite completely say goodbye to Kelly, but in that role, we've got some big shoes to fill.
Well, I mean, it is a great loss. And, if anybody knows Kelly and her passion for kids, it's great. But I guess my immediate concern is what is the direction that we're going? Because we do need to worry about those kids. So that would be my first question.
So we're actively talking about how to replace the position. So we can talk more about that, and plans are in place.
So my question is, because I'm not sure, if that's a high turnover position, and if we need to consider doing something extra for a teacher's assistant that runs the alternative classroom in order to keep someone in that position.
Let's keep talking about that. That's nothing that we're going to be able to decide at the table tonight, but I think it's a good point. And so, as this evolves over time, we're going to do the best we can to get through the end of this school year. And so I think that's an excellent conversation to have. I thought about that for a long time too. It's a pretty unique position.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Need a motion to approve the resignation of Stephanie Woodard from the position of daycare worker effective February 3rd.
So moved, Ken.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Need a motion to appoint Marcia Getman to the position of 1.0 FTE teacher aide.
Second, Ken.
Discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Need a motion to appoint Stephanie Woodard to the position of 1.0 FTE teacher aide effective February 3rd.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Need a motion to appoint substitute teachers as listed.
So moved, Ken.
Second, Kurt.
Discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Need a motion to appoint tutors as listed.
Okay. Second, Roger.
Discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Need a motion to approve Carl Mesmer as a volunteer math tutor.
Second, yeah.
Discussion?
So Carl just approached us, said he'd like to work with students. And can you set him up with some students? He's a retired teacher from Ithaca. So we're happy to have him on board.
Yeah, I'd just like to send out a special thank you for anybody that volunteers in our district for our kids. So, it's nice to have Aaron.
No further discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Need a motion to approve special productions musical staff for the 2014 spring musical as listed.
Okay. Second, Roger.
Discussion? And the musical again is,
Willy Wonka.
look forward to that. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Need a motion to appoint spring athletic coaches as listed.
Second, Craig.
Discussion? And we were just talking about volunteers, if you go down the list, there's numerous volunteers who are athletic program and many, many other programs, and it's true, it's great to see that. And no further discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
One abstention. Okay. Need a motion to appoint support staff substitutes. Ricky Bosco.
So moved.
Second, Ken.
Discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Need a motion to approve the creation of the Lee C. Great Memorial Scholarship.
Second, Craig.
Discussion?
Just another example of community giving back to the school. Someone set up a scholarship program for basketball team, or basketball individual, not gender specific. Thank you.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Need a motion to approve budget transfers as listed.
So moved, Roger.
Second, yeah.
Discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Need a motion to approve the CSE minutes as recommended.
So moved, Kevin.
Second, Craig.
Discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Need a motion to approve approximately 1,500 old novels and textbooks as surplus.
So moved, Ken.
I'll second.
Discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Public to be heard on any item. Anyone from the public? We'd love to hear from you.
I'm the Reverend Mother at this time, and I'd just like to say that STEM is not just a high school program, it's not an outside piece, it's something that science, engineering, math, which we have now building in numerous ways, it's the integration of the subjects and projects such as the rocketry project, or the Kid Win project, where they design, tested, measured, weighed, and balanced things for windows, put it on a multimeter, use four things, generated electricity, measured multimeters, and that's what it's about. And while it's really nice that we're so supportive of the high school, don't forget about us down here, where we generate the interest and start building these, the interest rates.
Thank you for that, Liz, because in that meeting that we held, we're in the beginning stages of discussions. It was brought up that, we would like to see it implemented from the elementary school all the way up through. Okay, because I think, John, correct me if I'm wrong, when we talked about that, we really were thinking of it not being in high school immediately, that we were going to at least get it going middle school wise, so that we could, in a sense, the next few years, develop enough interest so that it went into the high school, and then as we implemented that, to drop back down into the elementary school and begin to implement it there, and then work its way up through. So I think that's sort of the direction that we're looking at, but nothing's set in stone, and we really feel too that, and again, John, correct me if I'm wrong, but that there's enough resources within the program that we have right now to begin some initial stuff to happen without building a STEM classroom, without adding more staff and so on and so forth. And so that's the direction that we're thinking of right now, to begin that kind of movement. And I'm hoping that we can have some kind of movement come September of next year in that kind of direction. So that's the word.
Where there's resources, and the most valuable, which is time, because we are all interconnected and DLA 24/7.
I know that. We know that. So, look, as we continue with those kind of discussions, we're also looking for some leaders in each one of those buildings. So this to help us implement it and move forward with it. I know that probably John and Adam will be reaching out for those kind of leaders within our staff to begin that, and take it out of the hands of here, because I'm just bringing it up, but I think we have plenty of intelligence within our buildings to be able to get creative and make it happen, and then talk about how we can make it happen in the correct way. So, Roger, I'm sorry, continue to talk about it. They do
You may have touched it all, Michael. Yeah, I just had to say that, asking how many regional STEM schools there are in New York State, I heard there's only one experimental one. That was the reply I got from the OC superintendent. So it's pretty new about K to 12. And I did look, there are others in other states, but no feedback on it. Just applaud the fact that you're taking on the initiative. And I guess you're enriching the kids in the right way, so thank you.
More and more when you read about STEM, they throw the A for arts in the middle of it too, and call it STEAM. So you're seeing many more references to STEAM programs now.
And, I just keep talking about it because John has a little bit of a background from coming from Homer and implementing it within that district in some ways that does not have to include initial, added staff and added cost to our district. There are ways of implementing the ideas of STEM or STEAM. And that's the approach that I think we need to start with here. Because honestly, I feel our kids are losing opportunities that could be out there if we don't start talking about it. So.
about seminary?
Yeah, I have a comment. I just wanted to mention one thing that I didn't mention, which would be of interest, was of interest to me anyway, that the Elmira Hospital and the Binghamton, the mental hospitals, will still be open, but they're losing one ward, each one. And I wanted to know immediately which ward, and I said, is that going to be children's? And they said, no, it will be children's. Because prior to that, if those two hospitals are closed, there's 6 beds in Kingdom Ed for children, otherwise they go to the other one. So that's a really good thing. Now, the other thing I wanted to say is I wouldn't exactly call the position of the alternative classroom one of the roles. I was there 14 years, and the current one is there 4.5 years. So it's really not a real fast.
Anyone else from the public, other than Ken? It's not your turn. Anyone else? Okay, you're on, Ken.
I should have said this earlier, I just didn't. I guess because of the theme of when we went on, the theme of public support. So, as many of you know, the rest of the program has started at Hub, where we're taking canned bottle donations from the community. And we've been doing it since maybe September, middle of August. And so this community has generously donated $2,000 worth of bottles and cans to the rest of the program. So another thing, since it was on the theme of what I thought we were talking about, or it's part of what we're talking about, which is the support we get here through the whole school and volunteers and people giving back. So then we go to sectionals. There's 17 teams there, and we take up 25% of the leisures because of the people that follow our team down there watching us. So, yes, I wanted to comment on that because I think it kind of went with some of the theme that was being developed in this meeting.
If no other comments, need a motion for executive session?
Wait. I lost the wording for it in regards to.
Okay. Discussion of personnel matter related to a particular person in a student matter.
So moved, Craig. Second, Ken.
Discussion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Thank you and have a nice evening.
Sue, you asked about reporter.
They won now. They won by 15. They started off terrible. I'm going to play practice.
They were too short.
She got off to a terrible start. They're down 8-2 again at first. What is it?
3/4, that's a good improvement.
Yeah.
Coach has got to take those little wins.
Yep. Hey, win's a win.
Yeah.
All right. I'll see you guys.